Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the door controls number 8116 BCAL. This is a door closer from Door Controls USA. Door Controls USA is a company that specializes in automatic door equipment, services on that material, and then manual hardware as well, and this is their 8116 closer for us to review. My first impression is that I always appreciate the packaging when it looks as if it's not been distressed by a long boat ride from Asia, which is not a slight at all. That the fact that it's an imported item, I've had some of the greatest success with imported Asian manufactured door closers in terms of durability, reliability, etc. And the condition of the packaging when you receive it is like a bonus. It really tells you that the people that are having this material manufactured and imported, if they care enough for the box to look good when you get it, my logic is they care enough that the quality of the closer is exceptional as well. So this video is going to serve as a visual review, a dimensional review, a review of the installation instructions, and sprinkled in are my thoughts and comments regarding it. So the 8116 is going to be a relatively less common closer only because of its footprint. And this is the closer. So when someone calls up and says, I have a closer, I need a closer, okay, which one do you have? That's probably it's not the best question to ask, in fact. The first question I try to get to is, what is the footprint of the holes? The center to center horizontally, the center to center vertically. Okay, there are so many closers out in the world that exist. However, what really ties them all together in terms of being able to supply your client with a replacement closer is where are the holes already. And then there you go. If you want to select one importer or one domestic manufacturer over another, that's your preference. But I identify them based on, what's the footprint, where are the holes located. And that allows me to then dial in to what we're dealing with. This is an uncommon closer, I had said earlier, only because the location of the center of the holes is just simply less common. Now, some people will like to use these closers in a new installation because they're streamlined. They're long and narrow. You might call it contemporary. You might call it a modern style look. And if someone calls and says it's a 12-inch center to center, you're dealing with an 8116 or something equal to it. So it's 12-inch center to center horizontally. It's 3/4 inch vertically. Okay, that's important to know. And we're going to go through the visual part of the review of the closer. Will also include the dimensional properties. Overall length of the body, about 12 3/4. And again, that center to center is 12-inch on those screw holes. Okay. Overall height of the body, about 1 7/8. Center to center on those holes again, 3/4 inch. Projection of the closer off the face of the door is going to be about 2-inch. It's a non-handed, fully reversible door closer that's going to give you latch and sweep control. It's going to give you back check, and it's going to give you the ability to control the spring power, which will allow you to deal with a range of different door sizes and weights and environmental conditions. So 4 areas for you to stick a Allen wrench into on this closer, and we're going to go over all that stuff as we get into the installation instructions. One nice feature of this closer, and you'll most commonly see it, is with the real slick cover installed. And one nice feature of this unit, and again, it harkens in my mind to someone who really thought this through when they were engineering it, is you're going to hold the closer cover on with a couple of screws that are going to go down into the body that are there on both sides. But these 2 little holes allow you to insert that Allen wrench so that you do not have to make those final adjustments or the adjustments over time, over, say, the changing seasons of a year when air pressures change, use changes. You'd have to pull the cover off to adjust that. The spring tension, the spring power, you'd have to pull the cover off. But you're going to set that and forget it. That's what that's going to do. You can access the back check up at the top as well. Okay, so a really good looking installation. Let's take the dimensions of what the closer would be once you add the cover. Overall projection, about 2 1/8. Overall length, about 13 inch. Overall height, about 1 13/16 or so. Okay. Now this is what's called a tri-pack door closer, which means you will you can right out of the box install this in one of 3 ways, and the arms that are included here are going to permit you to do so. The arm and the parallel arm bracket. You're going to have a very common, very standard closer arm that you're going to see, rather ubiquitous. It's going to have its main arm. It's going to have its forearm. The forearm can adjust to account for reveal and just the final setting that you're going to contend with. It'll have the rod shoe that's here. This arm is called a regular arm. Well, let's call it the standard arm, the common arm, the arm that it's going to come with. You will use this arm to install it in a regular arm fashion, which is type 1, where the closer body is mounted on the door and you mount the closer on the pull side. Number 2 is a top jam mount, where you mount the closer body onto the header of the frame on the push side. If you were to get to the third type of mount, if you were to remove the rod shoe, the door shoe, and replace it with the parallel arm bracket, you're going to install the closer then in the parallel arm fashion, which is where the body is mounted to the door closer itself on the push side. Some basic dimensions of these arms. We'll just record them. When the forearm is at its minimum, you'll have an arm length of about 22 inch or so. These dimensions really don't matter, just since we've got the tape measure. Parallel arm bracket overall about 4 3/4, and then about 3 1/2. Okay, this is in the aluminum color, and it is the only color that I see that this closer is available in, at least currently. You're going to have a little cap. You're going to need this cap because it's a non-handed closer. You'll have the spindle shaft coming through both sides. One of the ends are going to get the cap, and you just pressure fit it in, and that's just going to finish off the look. After that, what we have is your package of screws, and really there's no difficult way about this. You need the 4 bolts for the body. You're going to need the screw to hold the main arm onto the top of the closer body into the spindle. You're going to need the 2 screws to hold the shoe on, or you'll need the 4 screws to hold the parallel arm bracket on, and then this screw. And after that, there's really nothing else that's in here. Your Allen wrench for adjusting the valves are in here. What's really nice about this closer is they automatically send you sex bolts. Automatically, you're going to get sex bolts. Absolutely strongly urge you to just do a new installation with these, or a replacement installation with these, if it's a steel door that's not reinforced, which is probably not common. The steel doors are probably reinforced. If it's a wood door, absolutely. Certainly. If it's a fire-rated wood door, mandatorily install it with sex bolts. If you're not going to drill and tap, put sex bolts. It's actually hardly no more work. Here's what I mean by that. You're going to drill on the opposite side of the door closer body, and this would only work if you're doing a parallel arm or a regular arm. A top jam, you wouldn't sex bolt it. You'll drill a 3/8 hole on the opposite side for the body of the sex bolt to go through, and then your typical, that's a 1/4-20 thread there, so I usually drill it like 5/16 or something like that. But what's really great about a sex bolt, or a through bolt, but the industry parlance is sex bolt, is because there's some thought that went into this piece of hardware, whoever designed it. The length is very specific, and it's there for a reason. You'll notice it's about 1 5/8. Okay? If you were to take a tape measure and stick it on the inside of the door all the way to the, if you were to take a tape measure and stick it from the outside of the face of the door here and measure to the inside of the other face of steel, it'd be 1 5/8. So that when you drill the 3/8 hole on the outside and you push your sex bolt in, and those ribs are there to prevent spinning, when you take the 1/4-20 machine bolt through the closer body and put it into the female portion and tighten it down, the diameter of the hole that you have drilled is smaller than the lip of this, or the diameter of the bolt head itself. And that diameter is 0.375. So, yeah, don't drill any bigger than 5/16. 0.375 is this diameter. So that when you push this through, and then you put the bolt on the other side, and you tighten, that piece of steel is going to hit against the rim of this bolt, okay, preventing you from crushing the door down. That's why Sex bolts are not only incredibly durable, but really solve a long-term issue. You sure don't want to have a door closer rip out of a wood door. I've had people install, it's not funny, I've had people install door closers on fire-rated wood doors which consist of no screw withdrawal strength, and the first time they use it, that closer body rips out of the door. It's hanging off the bracket, etc. Through bolt it, and you will be very happy that you've done that. Unless you have a properly reinforced door and you're drilling and tapping. Other than that, you're going to through bolt it, would be my hope. Now, the final thing that you're going to get is the installation instructions, and those will come with templates. And the next part of this video is going to talk about the method. We're now going to dissect the installation instructions. Now, with every set of instructions, it seems to me that door closer instructions are comprised of 4 parts. There's generally a parts list. Here's what you get. And in that same first group is going to be, here are the basic adjusting controls over the door closer. Put the Allen wrench here to control this, put the Allen wrench here to control this. So what you're going to get in the box, and then how to control it once it's installed. That's component 1. Component 2 is going to be components 2, 3, and 4. Well, those are the 3 different ways to install the door closer. So there's a page that is dedicated to each of those items. And indeed, what I like a lot about the door controls installation instructions is they literally give it to you in that fashion. Sometimes a part of it's here and sometimes a part of it's on the back end in terms of the installation instructions. But on page 1, you get exactly that. And by the way, there's a link below this video to the manufacturer's page, there's a link below the video to these installation instructions that you can review. We have covered the components. The closer body, they show a standard and an optional full cover. You're getting the full cover. I don't know. I'm only aware of one cover for this closer body. There are other manufacturers that will take a narrow streamlined closer like the 8116 style, and they'll give you a real slim cover like what we have, but then they'll give you one that's larger. It just is there, I guess, to make it look like a different style closer. Hard to say. Arm shoe, connecting rod, forearm, May-arm, parallel arm bracket, all of the screws. They're all there completely. Okay. Now, and absolutely do a reality check to make sure that you've got everything before you start your installation. You don't want to start drilling holes to realize I'm missing something, which never happens, but nonetheless, double check before you commence. Now, moving to the bottom of the first page, the next part of this is, let's get into the valve adjustment controls that are on the door closer. Let's get into the valve adjustments. The lower left-hand area of page 1 talks about the 2 latch, the 1 latch, and the D latch, and the back check valve. Let's define those. Doesn't really matter, but if you want a definition, here we go. You can call it the 1 latch if you want. That's really called the latch valve, the latch valve. That is basically the first 10 degree of opening or closing. The first 10 degree of opening, the last 10 degree of closing. That is the valve 2 will control just that small area. Latch 1 is called the sweep valve. So you've got latch valve, then sweep valve, and sweep valve goes from about 10 degree out to about 85 degree, something in that range. The D valve you do not have on this closer. There is no D valve. D valve would be the delayed action valve, which would allow you to extremely control the rate of close. ADA compliance requires a door to not close faster than 5 seconds. The standard sweep valve on a closer will absolutely allow you to control it well beyond the minimum required for ADA compliance. Because that's the case, I don't see the need for a individual valve. To allow that, okay? Because you're compliant with this closer. Finally, then the fourth valve is a back check valve. That back check valve is up on the top. Now what the back check valve does is simply control when the door gets from 0 to 10, latch, 10 to about 85, sweep, and then after that it's back check. So latch, sweep, back check. The back check valve controls how severe the closer will arrest the forceful opening of the door once it hits the back check range. The scenario is exterior door, the door swings out, windy condition. You don't want to have the door get open, 50 degrees, and then have the wind grab it and then rip the door straight open. Well, that back check valve will help arrest an uncontrolled condition. While it's not a dead stop, and while it's not meant nor intended to stop the door positively, it will help arrest the movement of the door out in that range. Then there's the spring tension adjustment. Oh, you know what? Sorry. So these valves, they're not marked 1 and 2. They're marked L and S, sweep and latch. Okay? I should have been showing you these as we went through. This is where your delayed action valve is not, and this is your back check valve. You will notice one nice feature of this closer is that the valves are staked. These little crimpings that have been done, they're there to help prevent you from unintentionally turning out that counterclockwise, that valve so far, opening it so far, that as soon as you cycle the door closer, the pressure inside will force that set screw to come out, oil will come out, the closer will not be repairable at that point. So those staked valves are to keep you. The first time I did one, I was, many years ago. Opened that valve too far, cycled the closer, the set screw popped out and oil came down my shirt. Clean up the mess and start with a new door closer is the bottom line. Now, the spring power adjustment is on the opposite side of the L and S. It's right here. Now you'll notice from the table that if you've got a size 3 door, which is going to be from 99 to 143 pounds, I'm not sure how they came up with those odd numbers, but nonetheless, there should be no adjustment made whatsoever. And they don't indicate in the chart, but this is being based on a regular arm or a top jam mount. If you have a parallel arm mount, expect to have to leave the reservation and make some adjustments, because the geometry of a door closer arm at 90 degree or at 0 degree, meaning perpendicular or parallel, affect the efficiency of this as a piece of mechanical hardware to pull the door closed. So you're going to have to increase the spring tension in a parallel arm mount. Absolutely you will, because you lose a step, you lose a size of efficiency. What I mean to say is, if you've got a number 3 size door according to the template, think of it as a 4 if you've got a parallel arm mount. Just kick it up one more step. And that's why you're really going to be getting into the 6 range with these, because you could have a 4-foot door that is 190 pounds, a 407 or 90-pound door in a parallel arm mount. That would be a 5, but you need to set that spring up higher to get it to a 6 to get that door to work, close more correctly. Now, we're going to touch on the 3 different installation types now. But don't make any adjustments until obviously you're installed. And don't make any adjustments at all until you're fully installed and you've tested it a few times. And we'll talk about that as we move on. Now, The next part of this video, we're going to start with the fundamentals that tie all of them together from an installation perspective, and move on from there. Now, what really ties the installation aspect together for all three is simply where you mount the door closer body in relationship to the vertical axis of pivoting. The imaginary vertical line that would go through the barrel of the hinges, or from the pivots, or from the offset pivots, or even in fact a center hung pivot. You'll notice that each of the installation aspects will always have a table. You're all going to have, well, I should have been pointing to this one. They're all going to have a table that's basically going to tell you the center line of the hinge or pivot based on the degree of opening, how far you move that body, or that first hole over. They're all like that. That's the parallel arm. Here's the top jamb. Here's the regular arm. They're all the same way. The first thing you do is determine how far you want the door to open. What's the degree of opening? Where do you want the door to go to, and not further than. A parallel arm mount is going to get you out to, you'll be able to, in certain instances with a parallel arm, if you don't have a wall condition problem, you'll be able to basically get that to 180 degrees, or very close to it. You know, I've sold door openings to schools, and they want to basically take that door to the playground and open it up all the way and hold it in the open position safely, out of the way of children coming in and out. And that a parallel arm will accommodate that for you. A top jamb and a regular arm won't get you quite there, but they'll open up, you know, to the 130 degree mark for sure. Generally, you're dealing with something that's 100 degree. You know, you want to physically install the closer so that it is in the ballpark of where you want the closer to not go past. If you've got a perpendicular wall condition, don't template the closer so that it can go, you know, past the 110 degree mark. There's no reason for that, because you'll be able to continue to push the door until you're hitting the wall, certainly, meaning that where the arms come out to when the closer opens, when the door is in the open position, you just don't want it to be permitted to go that far. So install it, template it, mark the hole locations accordingly based on that template. You're going to get your first dimension, whatever it is. Let's say if you're looking at the installation instructions below this video, I'll open them up, and let's just look at the regular arm mount, because that's very common. Let's talk about the three mounts. Regular arm, think of a restaurant bathroom. You go in, the door swings into the bathroom, the closer's on the interior of the bathroom. That's a regular arm. Now, think about your favorite coffee shop. You go in the morning, get your coffee, you leave, that door swings out, the closer body's mounted on the header, and the arm is on the face of the door. Perfect. Let's say that you are in the movie theater, and the exit doors that are there, those swing out, and those doors are on the exterior. In lots of movie theaters that I go into, parallel arm mount. Those closer bodies are on the interior, the climate-controlled part of that opening, and those doors swing out. That's parallel arm. Okay, so think of those applications. So you've determined your degree of opening. You've marked your first hole. Then simply mark the other 4 holes for the closer body. Go over, then go 12-inch over, and then go 3/4 inch down if you started at the top hole. That's it. Then mark the holes for the shoe. In a regular arm mount, you're going to go 5.5 inch over, and then 1 3/4 past that. You've got 6 holes. That's all. What I would strongly urge you to do at that point is do a reality check. Are you standing on the right side of the door, the correct side of the door per the template that you're installing it as? Is the closer going to be installed on the right side of the door? Have you double-checked your measurements? Have you made sure you're not 1 inch off? Once you've done a reality check on the physical locations of all the holes and you know it's right, I simply suggest you center punch all of the holes, all of them. Then pre-drill all of the holes. And what's nice about the 8116 from Door Controls is they tell you the size of the holes to drill for what you're going to install. Okay, 7/32 of an inch is what you're going to use to put the screws in. And what's really great is that happens to be the size that you need to pre-drill a hole to drill and tap for the 1/4 20 bolts. Once you've done a reality check, you've center punched, pre-drill all your holes, and literally put the door closer body up on the door. Then connect the arm according to the installation instructions. If you're doing a regular arm, a top jam mount, the forearm needs to be perpendicular to the face of the door. You're going to install the main arm onto the spindle according to what it's saying. Mark the S with the little pinion groove. There's going to be a little notch. And there may not be a notch as indicated, but there's always some indicating feature to it. And you can see that that's been clipped off, and that's going to serve as your S. So you're going to insert your arm down onto the spindle accordingly, and just make what you're doing physically match the drawing. If it's a parallel arm mount, guess where the term parallel arm comes in from? The main arm is going to be parallel to the face of the door. One thing to be mindful of in the the beginner problem is you install the door closer up on the door and then you realize nothing works right. Be mindful that when you are doing a regular arm or a top jam mount, the L and the S, the latch and the sweep valves, go towards the hinge. But in a parallel arm mount, they go away from the hinge. So where you physically put the body on the door is dependent, the short end is dependent on regular arm or top jam or parallel arm. Okay? You can tell I've done it the wrong way every time the first time I've done it. First time I do it, it's guaranteed to be the wrong way. So you learn. You've got the locate. Now, the critical thing with any of these installations is to observe the vertical dimension. Back to the regular arm. You've got a 2 3/8 dimension from that rod shoe screw down to the top hole of the body. If you've ever walked through a door and you've heard a clanking sound, well, that's the arm hitting the top of the door. The arm's either loose on the top of the door closer body, or it's just not installed vertically correct. You don't want that. So the horizontal dimension is really, as you can tell from the table, not so critical. That vertical dimension is critical, so be sure that you've observed the vertical dimension. Now, once you've mechanically attached the closer to the door and the header, cycle it. Make your adjustments. Have your spring, don't change the spring unless you really feel you need to. You're handicap compliant with this closer. If you are going to be installing, and I'm not going to go into the particular installation instructions of each mount, you can just read that. I've got you to the point where all you're doing now is testing it and then dialing it in. If you're going to be doing more than one, like more than 3 or 20 or 100, I would really recommend that you make a template for yourself, even if it's just for the 4 holes for the body, that you can square into the frame and then mark on the face of the door, because that repeatability of having a template made and you know it works on the first one just divides out of the equation the opportunity for error. And the double checking, the measure twice and cut once aspect of installing hardware is no longer necessary because you've already done that. You hold it up, it wouldn't take you very long to, if you're doing a parallel arm mount, to have a piece of 1x material that you are going to cut to whatever length and whatever height, and you're going to square it up into the opening on the stop of the frame, and you've calculated where those holes, those 4 body holes, are located based on what you need the vertical axis of pivoting dimension to be, and the degree, based on the degree of opening. Now all of a sudden, 2/3 of all the, well, in this case, half of all the screws that you'd need to drill are automatically located. And if you wanted to get fancy, you could take another piece of wood and mark your, the amount of time it takes to make a template. Let's say an hour. If you're going to do more than a handful of closers, my recommendation, very much so. I have machined wood doors for every piece of hardware imaginable, and having a template is crucial. And while you probably never expect to do an 8116 again, let's say, it sure be nice the next time you end up doing one, you've got the template already made. Finally, there is a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the door controls products that we sell, but a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to their manual catalog. I very much do mean what I say, that when the condition of the box is so intact, that it looks so good after it's got several thousands of miles and weeks on it, it does tell me that someone is concerned about the caliber of the product. I wouldn't hesitate to use door controls for their material. There is a link to a manual hardware catalog that you will find this 8116 in. It is, and as I'm looking through it, I would recommend any of their door closers, having reviewed a number of them. Their overheads I don't have experience with, but they're overhead concealed, I should say. But I wouldn't hesitate to use them. They get into some of the shotgun closers as rebuilts. They have a variety of low energy. They have a couple of low energy swinging units that if you have a bathroom door or something that requires handicap compliance, Door Controls is a slam dunk on that. Reach out to us and we'll be able to help you with that. A variety of pivots for a number of different aluminum door manufacturers, continuous geared hinges, manual hardware butts, lock sets. I wouldn't hesitate to use any of their material. Their exit devices, I know what those are. Those would be of good quality. Wouldn't hesitate on that. They've got ancillary material like storefront hardware and weather stripping. So if you're doing a typical common opening, Door Controls has you covered, and they do so in such a way that it's very prompt, reliable, predictable shipping lead times, exceptional customer service, even better technical support, and I wouldn't hesitate to consider them. If you have any questions on the 8116, back check aluminum door closer, or any other Door Controls manual piece of hardware, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you